Roger is not yet. So what we're going to do is we'll just kick over a couple things before, see if he can get on here in a little bit, and I can go over some other things for you before his presentation. And I apologize for this misstep. It does happen, I guess, from time to time, but we're all ready to go, and I was fired up, and I went, sure, I can't get it. So anyway, and then we'll take this particular webinar too, and we'll modify it to get rid of some of the chit chat that we've got going on here ahead of time. But I want to go over some things with you, and I was able to bring up a nice article about the art and science of pricing signs, and I want to be able to share that entire article with you, and I want to put it into the library so you have a chance to review it. It's all the things that we talked about before with regards to where you're working, the particular businesses that are in and around you, and understanding all those bits and pieces that go into not only the science part of the numbers of pricing signs, but that art side where you have to, work with a customer, like what Chris was talking about too, going back and forth and trying to figure out where I need to be able to make this sale, not give it away, make money, and then move on to the next customer and build that relationship. And those are the challenges, especially in the very beginning. There's no doubt about it. But you don't want to go ahead and just continue to drop your price just to get the job, because selling out on that isn't, you may learn something from it, but it's not going to help your business grow. So along with that, the other thing that we can talk about too is, what are you looking at with regards to different clients and people that you want to work with, as opposed to waiting for someone to respond to you. And then Roger, respond to you with your website or making a phone call to your business. Hold on a second. We'll talk to Roger. And I'm going to start out by saying that this session is recorded. It will go into the library. So if you want to go ahead and review it later for things that you may have missed out on, I want you to go ahead and to be able to do that. I also want to let you know that Roger Carroll he started his business back in 2013. So he's been around a bit. He's in Texas. He's going to give us a little bit of information about his business here in just a minute. But before we do that, what I like to do is have whoever we're having on as our guest, to have them know who he's talking to. So Lana, I'm going to start with you. If you would go ahead and share who you are, where you are, what's going on with you, so Roger has an idea about you.
Thank you, George. I'm Lana from Diablo Signery. I started my company in March last year. It took some time to get to rent my studio in September, and currently I'm in the process of hiring. It goes slow, but in a parallel, I do everything, fabrication and installation myself. Sometimes I hire somebody. That's
very good. All right, I got to shut this phone call off from Roger. Got that taken care of. Okay, very good. Thank you, Lana. I'm sorry. Christopher.
Hey, Roger. Hey, my name is Chris. I am part of Sign Me Up Studio. We are opening in Palm Springs. Should have our website up today and live, is what we've been told. Kind of waiting on that. And other than that, just trying to figure out how to navigate the waters.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Richard, Donna?
Yeah, Richard and Donna Watkins. We are Circle City Custom Signs in Indianapolis. We got our equipment about 3 weeks ago. We are in the process of hiring another person. First one didn't quite work out quite well. So we're in the process of hiring, but right now we're doing it all. So
okay, very good. And we have Allie on too. She's a regular on this particular call, which is great. If you want to come off of mute and introduce yourself to Roger real quick, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Allie. I work for Orion Signs and Graphics. We've been in a business for about a year and a half, and we're located in Michigan.
Okay, very good. All right, well, with that, Roger, I'm going to give you the floor, and you can talk a little bit about the size of your business, how many employees you have, maybe square feet, and then we'll start to get into that project. How's that sound? Roger, are you there? Hey, Roger?
Yeah.
We can't hear you on the screen. You can hear me, so maybe we'll just go through my phone. How's that?
You know what? That works for me because I have, I do a couple of these a week, and for whatever reason, I just can't get the, and I can hear you on my phone. So
Okay.
I mean, it's a wonderful thing.
Okay.
If they can hear me,
Yeah. Again, everybody hear Roger through my phone?
well, okay then.
Yeah. Can you? Thumbs up. Everybody can hear Roger? Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll keep the phone right here. All right, Roger. I had everyone introduce themselves. I don't know if you were able to hear them at all when they shared all their information, but it is recorded and they can go back and look at this later on. Can you right now just give us a quick background of you, your company,
Sure.
how long you've been at it, sort of thing?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a corporate refugee, like most of us. I was 25 years in the apparel industry. And then when I got to that last job, it was like, yeah, I just don't want to get another corporate job. So I, like a lot of you, I went in and I looked at everything from in-home non-medical care for the elderly to all the things that you look at. I found Sign World and said, geez, these people are awfully friendly, and everyone I talk to seems to like the business they're in. I said, let's get a shot. So we started, like George said, 2013. I think we found a place in 2014, and we started building signs in 2015. So what I've got here to show you today, and I'll get to a little bit about the progression. I was in 2,500 square feet with one guy, and that same guy is with me here 10 years later, over 10 years.
Good.
Same guy. I've got another girl that's been with me for 8 years. And we started out with just me and a guy. And then 2,500 square feet, we probably grew to 5 or 6 people when we moved into or doubled down to 5,000 square feet. And then we doubled down again in 2021 to 10,000 square feet, ramped up to, I think we had over 30 people at one time.
Wow.
No, I take that back. Well, yeah, it was right at 30. We're down to 18 now, which is about where we should be. So I'm pretty happy about that. Actually, it was 25 people, and now we're down to 18. Okay, so that's
George, I can't hear audio.
You went on mute,
I can't
George.
hear.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I should hold it like this. Is this better?
No, you're fine.
Oh, wow.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, it's me that screwed that up. Go ahead.
Okay, no worries. So at any rate, that's my background.
Yeah.
And where do we go next, George?
Well, if you want to go ahead and talk about the project that you're really wanted to share today, that'd be fine. If you want to bring up on the screen how it came about, the customer, the steps you took to tie that together to create a sale, when you came up with the estimate, that sort of thing. So,
Okay.
and as we go through this, if there's questions from anybody, don't hesitate to jump in and see if we can get those answered for you.
See if I can get this fired up for us.
Just share your screen and
Come down here. And we'll come over here. We'll come back down here. Okay, so you got that, right?
there's something coming up. Yep, Scottsdale Realty.
Okay. That's a Scottsdale reality. So let's go back to here. Okay. All right, we'll start there. And then you got the whole thing, including these slides over here on the left, right?
Right, we can see those panels, yes.
Okay. You okay with that? Do we need to go to a full screen?
I think that's okay.
Okay. All right. That'd probably be easier for me. Okay. Long story short, George asked me to come up with something. I said, I think what I'll do is one of the really formidable projects that I did early on that kind of helped me understand the business a little bit better and how you get going and so forth. So long story short, I'm going to be talking about our first monument sign. So as you can see, I was in business for 2013, 2014, and I was doing a lot of banners and I was doing a lot of lobby signs because I could buy them from Gemini and screw them into the wall and everything's fine. So then I had a guy who was pulling together a new campus for his mortgage company. This was back in May of 2017. So he wants me to come out to see what I'm looking at. So I go out and I see the campus and everything, and he hands me a rendering. And he said, look, we just built these buildings. I got the parking lots done. Everything's cool. Here's the entrance over here. What it needs is a big, beautiful illuminated sign. I'm going, not a problem. We can do that. And he hands me this rendering here, the Sycamore at Scottsdale. Well, the cool thing was while I'm talking to this guy in Flower Mound, Texas, I'm realizing that, hey, 6 months ago, my oldest daughter married a guy and they moved to Scottsdale. I've got a trip coming up, so I'll probably be able to take a look at this thing. And so I said, okay, look, I'm going to do some research on this. My kids are in Scottsdale, and I'll get back to you. So I actually went to Scottsdale and tracked this thing down. But take a look. Here's this big, beautiful rendering, right? And then the Scottsdale reality was a little bit smaller sign, but exactly the same shape and built the same way. So I called Kevin home because Kevin, I had built a couple signs for me previous to this deal. And I said, Kevin, what kinds of things are you going to need to know about this sign in order to give me a quote? So he tells me, I'm going to need to know this, how it's illuminated, and blah, 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 blah. I said, great. So I told my son-in-law, Jack, I said, Jack, we're out in Scottsdale now, visiting with my daughter and her husband. I'm saying, hey, Jack, though, let's take a little trip across town. So we tracked this place down. And before we left his house, I said, okay, let's get some screwdrivers and a couple tape measures and some ball caps. So we went out there like we were going to be servicing this thing, so to speak. So as we get to the site and we get out of the car, what we do is we go over and we actually measure this. Okay, so we got all the different measurements. We got some nice close-up shots of everything. And then what we did was we just unscrewed the little panel here, and Jack held it apart, and I got in there with my camera, and I took pictures of how it was illuminated inside. So the moral of the story here is don't be shy. When you've got an opportunity to go see something and get an idea of what you're up against, it's best to do it. Your camera's your friend. You take a lot of measurements, you take a lot of pictures. And then what I did was I came back and I put this together, or my one guy, my one employee who actually was good with FlexiSign, pulled together this specification sheet. Okay. And this was exactly the way that the gentleman wanted it. Okay. It's got, these long, looks like outriggers on the bottom, which were very cool. They were illuminated. Then the big sign itself, the cabinet, was illuminated. And then up along the side of this side of it, you see Add Scottsdale down here at the lower right. That was a strip of acrylic. Okay. And behind that was some LEDs. So that's what gave you that really nice uplight underneath the words the Sycamore. So at Scottsdale, those were pushed through acrylic, so I knew what that was. These up here were pushed through acrylics, but the puzzling thing and what really gave the sign a really cool, sleek look was this uplight. So we got that. Anyway, we send that down to Kevin, and Kevin gives me a number. I think it was somewhere between 8 and 10 grand to build this cabinet for me. So then I pulled together some numbers. I called the guy, said, I think 8 to 10 grand. What I do, I doubled it like you do, So I said, I think it's going to be around 20 grand. He says, okay, let's go. And so then I got to get it permitted. Well, I hadn't done a lot of permitting because, when you're doing banners and stuff and interior signs and lobby signs, you have to permit anything. So I probably had maybe gotten 1 or 2 permits tops, and now I've got this thing that's in a it's called the town of Flower Mound, and they had this huge comprehensive sign package application checklist. So I go through this whole thing, and I understand that I'm looking at this thing, and I know that there's a difference between what the client is telling me he wants and what I'm reading here. But nonetheless, I come up with this letter to the city of Flower Mound. Okay. And I'm pleading our case. And so I'm looking back at some of the wording here. And I'm these line items that I've got are addressing different items that were requested over here in the checklist. And I'm looking at some of the wording, that kind of cracks me up, now. But I've got a bullet point here: the monument sign will function harmoniously with the only other adjacent property, which is a Home Depot to the south, allowing the proposed sign design. So I'm saying, look, if you let me do this, it's going to allow for extra space on the base to ensure that the size of the text will blah, 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 blah. And then lastly, the cool flowing aesthetic of the sign as designed. So again, I'm prodding them. You need to permit this. Is destined to become a landmark the town can be proud of, blah, blah, blah. I just so proud of that letter. Anyway, long story short, they said, yeah, okay.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
This is so it's like, you're not going to get this, like on the lower right, you're not going to get this large, big, nice, sleek box like you think, okay? So one of the criteria was that you had to have a masonry boundary around the sign that was cohesive with this. I had to use the same stone that they had built their individual office buildings with.
Sure.
It was interesting. So at any rate, we got that going. We pulled this together. But now, it's not just a big cabinet sign. It's a cabinet sign and a masonry project all rolled up to one. So now it's starting to gain cost a little bit. So this is just a shot I took out of the job file that I still have on my drive here. And not only do you have to find somebody to build you a sign, now I got to find how to get power to the install location. Well, fortunately, the landlord, the guy who owned the mortgage company, got that taken care of. But I've still got to get it permitted. I still got to get some Gemini letters from the address that's on the end of the cabinet. And there's some other things. I've got revisions, and I've got the Texas custom signs that I'm working with Kevin Hall down on. Kevin was one of those stores that I had when I was trying to decide whether I wanted to get into the sign business. I actually visited Kevin's place, which is north of Austin in Round Rock. And I saw when I was down there that he had just gotten into the fabrication business. He had just he was just bending channel letters for the first time. And again, remember this is back in 2017. So there was a lot to it. And so, this was a big education, much different than setting the printer up, printing some vinyl, getting it plotted, getting it cut, and putting it on a wall or putting it on a piece of ACM or something like that. It was a whole different animal. But we did it, and Kevin did it. This was one of the first ones Kevin had done with a core tin finish, and that was interesting. Looked good. Not exactly what the customer was looking for, but it looked really good. And we took it out on site, and this was after, of course, we got some masonry work done. The masonry work was probably about $3,000, $3,500, maybe something like that. Sign itself was between 8 and 10. I think I had probably 13 or 14 in it, and the selling price was $22,000, $22,797. But the point and the moral to the story was that it's a difficult project, but you got to do one sometime. It's not, sometimes you scruff up your knuckles a little bit, but it really pays off in dividends by getting. So what my mindset at that point went from, okay, well, I got that as one of my signs, and I can do another sign over here in interior, and I just started to build, components of what I could offer to potential customers. That way, I could start building the business. More people would be interested because, not everybody's satisfied with an acrylic sign. Not everybody's satisfied with a banner. So, at any rate, by pulling this sign together, put that up on my website. This is a shot of my whip as of November 27th of 2017. So we started this project in May, and here I am about to wrap up 2017. And my whip has on the top line, I'm sorry, it's a little fuzzy. I couldn't, this is the only file I had. The mortgage sign on this project that I showed you was $22,797. The second line item here is a monument sign from Brinks, the big bank,
Right.
Which was very cool. And then I've got a reverse channel letter sign down here. I got some more channel letters over here, and another monument sign down here. So on this thing, I've got almost $40,000 worth of whip in monument signs, and that was a real revelation to me in terms of what you could sell. So at any rate,
All right. So a couple quick questions.
Sure.
The process that you went through from the customer that you knew nothing about, they found you on the web,
right,
called you. What was the discussion you had at that time other than, yeah, we can do it? Did he say, I've already got a couple of quotes, I'm looking for pricing? How did that all come about to where you then wanted to spend the time to create maybe a rendition of what the sign might look like? If you can talk if you can remember back that far, those beginning stages, because that's where we either win the customer right away or we lose them.
I think what it was that he had this vision in his mind,
right,
of what he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that I took it all the way through, getting from Flower Mound what the parameters would be for the sign, he said, well, was there anybody else in the deal? Not after the first couple of meetings.
Right.
There may have early on. But when he saw that he actually had somebody and that I was responsive,
yep,
and I think he got a kick out of the fact that I actually went out and saw that sign that he wanted,
right,
that he had a vision of. I actually went out and did that. I think at that point, that might have been what clinched it.
Yeah.
This guy is going above and beyond what these other guys are doing. They're just throwing numbers at me. I hadn't even thrown a number at him because I had no idea what I could throw at him. I said, look, I can't really give you a solid number until I do this.
Yeah.
And I think it was that gave him the confidence that the end result would be somewhat similar
Okay.
to his dream sign,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw this. If you look at this sign right here, his motto, or rather his website, is dreamlending.com. So he liked this thing because of this whole sweeping
Aspect.
the way it was lit, dreamlending.com. He fell in love with that, and I think maybe other people. Yeah, I don't know, but I do know after like meeting number 2 or 3, there was nobody else in the picture.
Okay.
And we had yet to get a deposit. We had yet to do much of anything, to be honest with you, which is why it did take all the way from May to December. We installed that. We stuck with him. He stuck with us. It was that kind of thing.
How much time would you say you spent investigating every bit of this project, total hours that you may or may not have been compensated for because it was your very first one?
Right. I would say it was an easy 40 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I look back to some of the, when I look back and I get this letter that I sent to the city.
right.
I went through this very thoroughly. I've got a person who does nothing but permits now, so I haven't done this kind of thing in a long time. But I do remember it's a very time-consuming process.
Right.
And the thing about doing your homework on what you can and cannot do is that you avoid false starts.
Yep.
So you'll find that one of the things that happens to you is that your client may tell you, well, I'm sure we can do this, or I can do this, or I know somebody at the city, or yada, yada, yada. You got to be very careful. You got to know exactly what you can and cannot do so you don't run down a rabbit hole on something that you're never going to be able to permit.
Right.
There are people who all the time pass things in front of me, and I say, I understand you're in love with that, but you can't do it, and here's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't want to hear that. That's when they're going to ask somebody else, and I'm going to ask somebody else, and they'll probably find somebody who may or may not have done their homework and doesn't know whether they can really do it or not. And they may be running off with somebody, and then you'll find that 4 or 5 weeks down the road, they call you back up and they say, it turns out that we're having difficulty getting it, blah, blah, blah. What was it that you said you could do, blah, blah, blah. I've had that happen a couple times.
Right. All right. So now you've got, you lack of a better term, the hook in your customer. They're interested in what you're doing. You've provided a good layout. And then as you're going through the project, you have to think about some things that you've never done before. You've never mounted a monument sign in place, and yet, who do you have to help you do that? What are the resources that Kevin's great because he's going to build this cabinet for you, and he's going to put it on a trailer, and you've got to haul it off, and you got to lift it off the trailer, you got to set it in place, you got to bolt it down, all these things you're not familiar with. How do you go and learn all of these steps that are needed for to finish this thing to the end? Because in the very beginning, when I look at this, when I'm very young and new in the business, it's daunting.
Right.
There's so many pieces and parts and components. So how did you step through that?
Primarily calling other sign companies and asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So there were a couple other sign companies in town that had opened up a little earlier than we had, not a ton. And the guy that I had hired, my first hire, had worked in the sign business for a while. So he goes, I got a cement guy, and then probably the other one that's a little difficult is you don't have a truck yet. You don't have a crane. You don't have something that can actually lift this cabinet up. So, there are people that are in the business of nothing but owning a truck, providing those kinds of services. to a number of different, you know, either sign companies or something else. So you find that guy,
Right.
and you start building a team, I guess is what to call it, because now I got people who paint for me. I got people who, you know, I have a regular truck. I don't have a scissor lift for like the inside of a warehouse. I'm doing something like that. So over the years, I've developed, you know, a black book of people who can paint, people who can install, people who can do masonry, people who are you know,
Electrical. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who are in certain trades, and if you never do anything different than what you're always doing, then that you don't. It's difficult to build that base that'll allow you to build even more and exotic things in the future.
Right.
Well, I like developing those people. First, I like talking, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's how you do it. You build some friends. You know, you make friends.
Yeah. And it's an extension to your business, which is obviously really helpful. All right. So now you've got this thing, you put this first, you know, beautiful monument in place that you're real thrilled with it. You've learned a lot from it. What did you do different on the next one that you didn't do on this one? How did you approach that?
I stayed away from the Corten surface because it looks different to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's tough to, you know, so there's things that are difficult to execute on that. So I kind of stayed away from Corten surfaces. I stayed away from encircling cabinets with masonry. Instead, I went to a masonry base and then built the cabinet up from that, so I didn't have to worry about the masonry coming around. I don't think I ever built another one with that like surf wave that goes in the middle of there. But it was just, you know, it's just the things that. But the push through letters, not a problem.
Yeah.
And the actual kind of what I call the outriggers on this thing on the bottom, that is actually not much. It looks pretty exotic, which is something that we'll do in a little bit different way. But we started to add, you know, instead of just a box, what we learned from this was that, you know, if you add a little something, then it's going to look different than the guy's monument sign next door or down the street or whatever. It's going to get some more attention.
Right.
So we picked up some things, we dropped some things, and on this particular project, we made some friends. At one point, we had to drill underneath of a parking lot and then underneath of another piece of concrete in order to get up to where the sign was actually put on the grass here. So you see the concrete here.
Mm-hmm.
We had to drill underneath the concrete here.
You had to bore a trench to run electrical.
Yeah, we had to trench it. So it turns out that the guy who did this, he's got a building here, he's got a building here, he's got like 4 buildings on this campus, and this was at the entrance to the campus. But we picked up a guy who could trench for us.
Yeah.
So we hadn't had anybody who could trench for us before that. Now we got a guy who can trench for us and did some work for us. These guys who did the masonry work, they stuck around for a while. We probably did, I don't know, another dozen signs with those guys before we went on to our next mason type guy. So just by doing these things and getting to know the people who can execute that for you.
Yeah, it is key.
Yeah, it gets you a team of like a go-to team for specialties, for lack of a better word.
And we do have owners now, new owners that are virtual. They're not the brick and mortar. They don't have the equipment, and so they're trying to develop those relationships as well, to have a team together to help pull all the different elements together to build a sign like this. Does anyone do you have anything else to add, Roger? Or we can open up for some questions.
Open it up.
Okay. Anybody have anything that they want to ask Roger about what it took for him to get this project going, or the discussions he had, or anything about it at all that you want to hit him up on at this time?
Hey, Roger. I'm just curious that when you bid this sign, you kind of mentioned the steps that you went through, and that was, you went and found somebody to make the monument for you. And then you doubled it and you gave a quote. At that point, did you know how much the mortar and the ancillary items were going to cost when you did that, or did you just kind of spitball that to get something out to the guy?
Well, we had some projections because we had this drawing right here. Okay, we were able to send that to the masonry guy and get some ideas on how that was going to work for us. The only other thing then is that we get the sign from Kevin. Kevin gave us a good number. We get the masonry sign from here. The only other thing was that was the permitting and the trenching, and the landlord took care of the trenching. We took care of the permitting, and what did we do? I think I had an electrician, a licensed electrician. My guy got licensed a little after we had built this one, but I had to. He had a friend who already had his master's license, so we had that guy do all the electric for it. So we had all of that in advance when I got to this point, and I said, "Here you go. You can't have this anymore. City won't let you have that. What the city will let you have is this right here, and this is going to cost you $22,000, whatever." Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, we had change orders along the way. That was very interesting.
Now there's some owners that I see today that are adding extra line items to projects, and one is project management and just a straight fee for the amount of time. 40 hours is a long time. Design time, research. But what I'm going to guess too is that even though this is a learning curve, you were okay with eating some of those costs, because the next one you were going to do wasn't going to be 40 hours of research. It was probably maybe half.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was exactly it, because a lot of that time I spent working with the city and I mean, calling these people up and having conversations with them and working, and that was very helpful in that it took, I was no longer intimidated with calling people up. I didn't know in areas I knew nothing about, and then just peppering them with questions, and therefore turning myself into the expert. So when I went back to the client, I'm the expert.
Right.
So now you can't. There's a blah 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 blah.
Right.
So a lot of time early on, at least in this particular project, was that I was learning a lot about how it worked, the whole thing, the whole permitting thing, because it's one thing. I think up until this, I've primarily been doing indoor stuff and vinyl and everything. This really involved working closely with a municipal requirement.
Right.
Because everything like this that you see is required to be permitted, and I had to build the permitting skills somewhere, because I was it. We weren't going to hire anybody for permitting. We just had to do it. So this was one of my first really in-depth ones, and I spent a lot of time on it because it was fun. It was fun talking to the people of the city, and then going back and talking to the guy that owned the property and owned the project and so forth. And I just like the idea of digging into it and unraveling the puzzle, so to speak.
Right. Lana, do you have a question?
Yes, there are so many materials available on the market. How did you choose the right material for your project?
The city chose it for me. And the client chose it for me. So back in the beginning, when the client showed me this, when I sent that to Kevin, Kevin said, "Yeah, let's do Core 10 on that." And I don't think Kevin had done more than one or two Core 10 signs by that time. So we learned about that type, about the ability to take an aluminum box and make it look like it was
Steel.
weathered iron.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So that was kind of cool. And then I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, it's just the materials that she was wondering how did you choose which materials to use? Because there are so many different ways to build a sign. There's so many different materials that you can put into it. There's so many different designs.
Right.
So how did you create, other than you're duplicating what the client wanted, obviously, but you also now have to incorporate by talking to your suppliers, vendors, whoever you're going to use, what would we use this? Because in the beginning, you don't know which materials to even consider. And so you need.
I had no idea what this was made out of.
Yeah.
When I first got into the job, it wasn't until I actually got out there and I could see this.
Right.
So up here you can see that this looks the same as this.
Right.
And it all kind of weathered, but down here you can see that that's weathered to a different extent.
Right.
Kevin knew what it was. Kevin could recognize. He had seen it before. I hadn't seen anything like it.
It's almost like reverse engineering, and you'll see too when you're out and about. I really encourage you to get up close and look at materials and try to figure out what is that material that they use to actually build that sign, to create that sign. Not knowing exactly what the cost might be, but once you pull materials together, then you have an idea what those are, what those costs are, and then you can do your markup from there. Does that answer pretty good, Lana?
Thank you.
It'd be nice if it was just cut and dry. Well, you would do this or you would do that. It's very creative. That's what it boils down to. And there are companies that will cut corners to save a buck, and they'll use inferior products, and the sign will reflect that later. And there's others that'll build something that'll be a piece of art that's going to last a long, long time. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Richard, Donna, you have anything you want to ask Roger, since you got him on the line?
I don't think so. It's a pretty cool sign, but we're just, kind of.
Our biggest hurdle right now is the same as far as knowing what materials to use, and we're just now starting out. We don't know a lot about the permitting. It's a little bit intimidating, and some of the what we're coming up against is strictly online. We were fortunate enough to get someone's number that we could reach out and talk to them, but for the most part, we had to fill it out online.
Yeah.
So we don't know, like, whenever we read it, we interpret it one way, and we're just hoping that's the right way.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is I find that even though the cities are all very busy and sometimes they outsource a lot of this work, to go down and to actually talk to somebody at the counter, they'll explain things, they'll bring up some other samples or examples of other sign companies of what they've already turned in to have approved, and you can get ideas of how things are actually put together in such a way where that they'll be able to process your permit. So there's a lot to learn, especially in the very beginning, but you build on that, as Roger has over the last 12 years now, is it, Roger?
Yep.
Yeah. Technical difficulties to get this thing going today. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll have Sheree modify it a little bit.
Gotcha.
But thanks again for everybody being here today. Any other questions before we go? If not, I'll let you get back to work, make some sales, and have yourself a great rest of the week.
Thanks, George. I enjoyed myself today.
Thank you, Roger.
Hang in there because, sooner or later you'll look behind you and you'll have built, dozens and dozens of signs and all this old hat to you.
Right, right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Roger. Congratulations again.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.